Dr. Nightechoes. It was in the summer, around dusk, and I was camping at a remote campground with my dad. There was a lake right next to the grounds. My dad and I would trailblaze through the forest right next to the lake because if you went far enough, there was a really pretty waterfall. A few strange things happened on this hike. First, we found a slash pile that had a little kid's shoe on top. This seemed very odd for such a deep part of the woods. When we came to a small clearing, my dad had to take a leak. He faced one side of the clearing, and I faced the other side. Suddenly, we both clearly heard a child say, "I am over here." My dad thought it was me speaking to him. When he realized it was not me, we both got very worried. We spent half an hour looking for someone in the trees, but we found nobody at all. The woods were silent and empty. After that, we gave up on going to the waterfall. We started to make our way back to camp as quickly as we could. However, there were clear sounds of something following us through the brush. We heard twigs snapping and bushes shaking right behind us. It felt like we were being watched by something hiding in the shadows. We did not stop to look back. We reached our campsite and stayed close to the fire for the rest of the night. We have not been camping there since that scary day. I still think about that child's voice in the clearing. I wonder if someone was playing a trick or if someone was actually in trouble. Finding that shoe on the pile of branches still haunts my dreams. The woods can be a very beautiful place, but they can also be very terrifying. My dad and I always stay on the marked trails now. We never want to hear a mystery voice in the wilderness ever again. It was a lesson we will never forget.
This was not hiking so much as car camping, but we were way out there in the middle of nowhere on BLM land in Colorado. We drove for an hour and a half down a Forest Service road and did not see another soul. You could see headlights and hear cars from miles away from our campsite. It is not like somebody could have snuck up unnoticed. We had 3 cars with us and 8 people. We had just finished eating dinner and cleaned up. It was getting dark, so we went back to the cars real quick before hitting our tents for the night. That is when we found it. Somebody had slashed the front right tire on each of the 3 cars with what appeared to be a box cutter. Everyone thought it was a prank at first, but it became very apparent very quickly that it was not. All of us were beyond spooked. It was like panicking, scary to watch spooked. We all had spares, and one dude had a gun, so we threw on our donuts while that guy literally guarded us. We got the hell out of there as fast as we could. I still have nightmares about it sometimes. Just knowing there was some person probably watching us makes me feel sick. They were out there in the dark, maybe wanting to harm us. It makes me feel physically ill to this day. We were lucky that we had the tools to leave. We were lucky that we stayed together. If we had been alone, things might have been much worse. We drove away and did not look back. The dark woods felt like they were closing in on us. We reached the main road and finally felt like we could breathe again. I never want to feel that kind of fear ever again. We never went back to that part of Colorado. It remains a dark memory for all 8 of us who were there that night. I go hiking in the woods that permeate my town, sometimes so late that I get to see the sunrise out there. The strangest thing I ever saw was what I could only describe as a shanty town that was built up seemingly overnight deep into the woods. There were simple little hovels made of scrap metal and bed sheets, and a small fire pit that someone had made out of an old tire with the fire still burning. But that was not the weird part. The weird part was that this was well past midnight when I found this place, and it was quiet as a grave. There was no one there. Someone took the trouble of getting a fire going and then left it. From the look of it, this place could hold about a dozen or so people, and yet there was nothing there but the fire they abandoned and whatever possessions they had left in the shanties.
One night, my friend and I decided to hike to the top of this small mountain at night for a meteor shower. There were 4 of us, all around 16 at the time, and we thought it would be cool. We drove over and started hiking. We took a break about halfway up when we noticed there was a guy following us in a business suit. We were weirded out, so we decided to start back up and walk a bit faster. But by the next time we stopped, he was about 10 feet away, so we bit the bullet to see if he would just walk by. He did not. He stopped and asked if we were there for the meteor shower and if he could walk with us. It was weird for a 30-something-year-old man in a suit to want to hike with 4 16-year-olds, but we said whatever. As we were walking, my friend and I noticed he was walking really close to our friend. She was the only girl in the group. He was so close it was like he could smell her shampoo. We got to the top and sat down, and he sat down almost right up on our friend. With her reasonably freaked out, I made an excuse on why we had to leave early. We promptly booked it out of there. We were nearly running the entire way down. When we got back to the car, we thought it was cool that we ditched the weirdo. But we were wrong. When we were all in the car, my friend pointed out that this guy was full-on sprinting down the trail. He was running towards our car with a large stick. Being in a car, we just drove out of there very shook up. We chalked it up to some dude on some hell of a drug, but 2 days later, we all got a text linking us to a news report. It was about a guy that had strangled his wife. He then proceeded to kill another girl later that night on a hiking trail. It was the guy. It was the same dude at the same hiking trail. We never told our parents about the incident and never went back there, ever. When I was younger and stupider and going to college in the North Georgia mountains, my friends and I would go night hiking a lot on the trails near campus. I got pretty familiar with the area and being out in the wilderness at night in general, which probably made me too confident. One night, the full moon was out and the weather was perfect, so visibility was crazy good. Everything was basically washed in dim blue light. I was slightly stoned and feeling adventurous, and I love doing fun stuff alone, so I decided to go enjoy a night hike by myself. I took a flashlight, but this was around 2002, so I had no cell phone. I chose a super easy trail that was mostly flat. It was maybe a mile loop in a pretty secluded area, but it was not exactly a national park. It was a very rural area. I did not even need my flashlight for most of it, and just hiked in the moonlight. It was actually a really cool and beautiful experience at first. At some point, I started feeling uneasy, and maybe a millisecond later, I heard a man's voice. It was coming from a good distance ahead of me, somewhere off in the woods, maybe from the right side of the trail. He was crying. I am honestly an empathetic person, and most of the time I hear someone crying, I want to comfort or help them. But this time I felt sick in the stomach, like a dry panic attack. I remember coming very close to calling out to him because my brain was trying to tell me he might be hurt. That was the only reason I hesitated, but it was like my body shut my voice down. I knew I had to stay very quiet. He was sobbing like he had just found out a loved one had died. He was also gibbering and babbling like he was less than a person. I knew deep down he was not right in the head. I made it back to my car safely. I am convinced to this day I was in real danger.
I go out for walks very late at night fairly often. Because of this, I have seen a few strange things. The creepiest thing happened about 2 months ago. I left the house around 1:30 a.m. It started off as a normal walk. I wandered around the town until about 2 a.m. Then, I decided to go home. I was walking back the route I had come. That is when I noticed a black van meander down the street. I did not really pay too much attention to it at first. However, I did pay attention when I saw it slowly drive by me for a second time. I was not entirely sure it was the same van. I just continued walking. But this time, I kept an eye out. Lo and behold, about 10 minutes later, the same black van came down the street again. This time, I knew for sure. I saw that it did not have license plates. Now I was fairly scared. I picked my pace up a little bit. When the van came around again, it stopped in the middle of the road. It was parked just a few houses in front of me. I stopped and turned around. I've booked it back in the other direction. I made a few turns onto different roads. Then, I ran right into someone's yard. I waited behind their fence. The same van came down the street. I assumed that when they could not find me, they finally decided to leave. I waited in that yard for about 20 minutes. Finally, I ran back to my house. I practically threw myself through my bedroom window. It was a very scary night. I still think about that black van. I wonder who was inside and what they wanted. It makes me feel very uneasy when I walk at night now. I am much more careful than I was before. I always look behind me to see if I am being followed. That night changed how I feel about my town. I used to often spend my summers bouldering with my friends by a relatively large forest. It was about an hour and a half away from where I used to live. We used to spend some of the nights camping out there, just to save some travel costs and time. I think this was roughly the third or fourth time we were out there camping. My friend had left all her climbing gear and her rucksack just outside her tent. At least, we definitely think she did. The next morning, we found her boots, a few clothes, and all her chalk powder had disappeared. We figured that it could have been feasible that she misplaced it. We were quite sure that they were next to her tent, but we did not really want to believe that they were stolen. We did not read too much into this. We just stupidly said to ourselves that perhaps she had left it by the boulders. We thought some animal took an interest in it. I know it sounds stupid, but it was reasonable to us at the time. Fast forward a year later, we were at the same spot as usual. We were sitting by the tents and chilling after having some food. It was pitch black out, and only the camp area was lit by the fire. I went somewhere a bit out of sight to take a slash. What did I see? I saw a dude in a full ghillie suit. He was laying on his stomach and looking right towards our campsite. I stood there frozen as this dude realized that I had seen him. He just bolted out of there into the dark. I do not know whether the event from the year prior was related to the ghillie guy. However, this event has definitely stuck with all of us. We have not been back there since that night. It is a damn shame because we loved that spot. But knowing someone was watching us from the dirt changed everything. We never felt safe there again.
This happened to me a few years ago. I used to go to school at the University of California, Santa Cruz. I am a runner, and the campus is in a beautiful redwood forest, so I would run on the trails. One day I left a little later than usual on a run through one of the more isolated trails. Here is where it gets weird. I was about 15 minutes running deep into the woods and still had not seen anyone else around. Suddenly, up ahead, I saw what appeared to be a homeless man in ragged clothing walking on the trail. Now he was walking further into the woods, and this path went very, very far, and the sun was setting. Basically, this man was spending the night in the woods. I wanted to reach my usual running checkpoint before turning back, so I decided to keep my distance and run by. As soon as I passed the man, he called out to me. What came first, light or sound? In my head, I was like, what the fuck? This guy is nuts. But I decided to humor him and yelled out, light, without looking back. He said, well, I think it is sound, but who knows? And started mumbling to himself. I continued on. I reached my goal and started to head back. It was really dark now, and I was feeling sketched out that I had to pass this guy again to get back. He seemed pretty crazy and potentially dangerous, but I did not have a choice. I got past the point where I first passed him, but he was nowhere to be seen. There were not any other branches of the trail, and if he had headed back, I would have seen him by then. He must have gone off the trail. Suddenly, a girl from up on a hill screamed for me to stop. I stopped and looked up on the hill, but it was too dark to see anything. I was freaked out. I called out to ask if she was all right and eventually saw her climbing down. The hill was really steep, so she put in a lot of effort to get up there and away from whatever was after her. She said that she was on a run when a scary homeless guy started harassing her and he chased her up the hill, but she did not know where he went. She was going to spend the night there until I came along because she was too scared to go back down. At this point, we both wanted to get the hell out of there. Who knew if this creepy man was lurking around, watching us from the dark? So we ran back together and made it to the road. She thanked me, and we parted ways. I never ran back on that trail again. Santa Cruz can be a pretty weird place. I have heard legends of students flunking out of school there and then just living in the forest. Maybe this guy was a student from years past. When I was very little, like 5 or 6, my dad used to take me on all sorts of adventures through nature, especially when we owned a little cottage up in the Scottish Highlands. Now, my dad is sort of a combo Irish bloke plus Yorkshire laddie type of fellow, and very spry, despite his being about 55 at the time. And on this particular occasion, he had decided we were going to go hiking way up into the cliffs. I was quite happy with this development, as it meant a piggyback ride for at least 90% of the difficult bits. This was a proper trek. He wanted to get to one of the highest bluffs so we could have an amazing 360-degree view of the gorgeous meadows and some sparkling sea. But after we reached the top plains, where it is all short, wind-whipped grass and you can see for miles, he suddenly turned very still and very quiet. When you are small, your parents are God. So seeing your dad look frightened is scarier than anything your own mind can come up with. So I was pulling on his arm and going, "What? What?" My mom is epileptic, and I saw her fits when I was a kid, so I thought it was happening to him too, or something similar. And I would not know what to do because we are up on this huge cliff and no one is around. When just as fast as he started it, he snapped out of it. Fireman lifted me right up and just started striding away without a word. Over his shoulder, I could see a big, pale yellow object stuck into the ground like an obelisk. I know now that it was a refrigerator. When I was older and I asked my dad about it, he stiffened up and told me that when he was a boy in the 50s, he and his little friends had found an old-style fridge in the woods, and being little boys, they opened it. Well, of course, they had found a body, another child, who by whichever means had found themselves in the fridge and unable to get out. My dad has never mentioned a gender, which leads me to believe he either witnessed a very decomposed or skeletonized individual, but I cannot ask him. Remember that episode of The Simpsons where they unlock Homer's PTSD and it turns out he found a dead body when he was a teenager? My dad grew increasingly uncomfortable the first time we saw that episode and had excused himself to the kitchen before the ending. My dad has seen some gnarly shit, but for whatever reason, he will not discuss anything further about this dead child in the fridge, only that it happened. So when he explained, I assumed it was the trauma, and I said something like, "Oh, Dad, that is awful. So when you saw the fridge up there, it brought up the old memories?" And he honestly looked at me with his big blue eyes like I was an idiot. I will never forget it. "No, Amy," he said in a very low tone. "It was because it was the same fridge." It was about 1 o'clock in the morning. My dog rang her bell, and I begrudgingly got up to take her outside. When she wants to pee in the middle of the night, I do not take her very far, just into our side yard. I took a flashlight with me in case she decided to poo so I could pick it up. I am standing there waiting for her to do her thing. She is doing the doggy walk in a circle thing. Then all of a sudden, the dog gets spooked and whips around. Out of the corner of my eye, I see this chick just standing there. I did not see her walk up. I did not hear her walk up. I just see her standing there super still. Based on her position, she had to have come from between my house and my neighbor's house. Which is odd, because the back of our houses back up to a greenbelt. It is probably 40 degrees outside, and this lady, about 20,
is in super short shorts and a t-shirt. I looked at her, told her she scared me, and she mumbled something like, "Nice night, what are you up to?" Standing there holding the leash with my dog, I said, "I am walking my dog." Then she said, "Cool, cool. Do you know how to get into my house?" I locked myself out. She was pointing to my neighbor's house.
It was about 1 o'clock in the morning. My dog rang her bell, and I begrudgingly got up to take her outside. When she wants to pee in the middle of the night, I do not take her very far, just into our side yard. I took a flashlight with me in case she decided to poo so I could pick it up. I am standing there waiting for her to do her thing. She is doing the doggy walk in a circle thing. Then all of a sudden, the dog gets spooked and whips around. Out of the corner of my eye, I see this chick just standing there. I did not see her walk up. I did not hear her walk up. I just see her standing there super still. Based on her position, she had to have come from between my house and my neighbor's house. Which is odd, because the back of our houses back up to a green belt. It is probably 40 degrees outside, and this lady, about 20, is in super short shorts and a t-shirt. I looked at her, told her she scared me, and she mumbled something like, "Nice night, what are you up to?" Standing there holding the leash with my dog, I said, "I am walking my dog." Then she said, "Cool, cool. Do you know how to get into my house?" I locked myself out. She was pointing to my neighbor's house.